identifying each of the Four Noble Truths. What's number two? What is that number two? Pertaining to the practice associated with the Four Noble Truths. Practice associated with the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha taught. The Buddha taught the truth of suffering is to be identified. The truth of the cause of suffering is to be abandoned. What should you do with after knowing what the truth of suffering is? Your job is to identify the truth of suffering so well. So the Buddha said, the truth of suffering is to be identified. The truth of suffering is to be identified. Then once you identify the truth of suffering so well, you know the truth of suffering so well, then you become so desperate. How to get out of this? If you want to know how to get out of this, what should we do? You should identify the cause of suffering and abandon that. So the Buddha said, truth of the cause of suffering is to be abandoned. Okay, first one, the truth of suffering is to be identified. Truth of cause of suffering is to be abandoned. What will happen if I abandon the truth of the cause of suffering? Then the Buddha said, the truth of the cessation of suffering is to be actualized. Actualized meaning to be experienced. The truth of cessation of suffering is to be actualized. A-C-T-U-A-L-I-S-E-D. Actualized. Actualized meaning to achieve, to attain, to achieve, to experience. The truth of the cessation of suffering is to be actualized. Then, how to actualize this? Then you go to the fourth one. Truth of the path leading to the cessation is to be meditated upon. Truth of the path leading to the cessation is to be meditated upon. By meditating on the path, truth of the path leading to the cessation, this will give rise to the actualization of the truth of the cessation of the suffering causes. Okay, should I repeat this or not? You got it? Okay, that is pertaining to the practice associated with the Four Noble Truths. What is number three? Huh? Okay, don't be too shortcut. Give me full. I give you full. You give me full. Pertaining to the results of the practice of the Four Noble Truths. Pertaining to the results of the practice of the Four Noble Truths. Okay, results. The Buddha said, although the suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified as suffering. Although the suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified as suffering. Same. Then we apply this to the remaining three. Although the truth of suffering is to be, truth of the cause of suffering is to be abandoned, but there is nothing to be abandoned. Although, now what is number three? Yes. Although the truth of cessation is to be actualized, but there is nothing to be actualized. And what is number four? What is number four? Although the truth of the path leading to cessation is to be meditated upon, there's nothing to be meditated upon. Right? Okay, this is the result. Okay, now you may be wondering, so we have to go through these three sets, one by one. What's the first one? Truth of identification. Identifying the truth of the Four Noble Truths. The first, the Buddha said, this is the truth of suffering. So when the Buddha taught this is truth of suffering, Buddha is indicating to the three levels of suffering. Okay, I'm sure you know what the three levels of suffering are. What are they? Suffering, suffering change, and pervasive conditioned suffering. Let me repeat. Suffering. Number two, suffering change. Number three, all pervasive or pervasive conditioned suffering. Pervasive conditioned suffering. Okay, just raise your hands those who are hearing this for the first time. The three kinds of suffering. Raise your hands those who are hearing this for the first time. Okay, if there's no hands coming up, then I'm going to dash through. If there are hands coming up, I have to slow down. Okay, no hands coming up, which means I can dash now. Okay, I'm not going to go through each of these three now. So the first one is the truth of let's say, the suffering oftentimes can be translated as the manifest suffering, evident suffering, which everybody identifies as suffering, sickness, aging, death, and so forth. Okay, that is truth of suffering. Truth of suffering change? No, the suffering change is what?
The pleasure. What you think it is pleasure?
The truth of the suffering change is all what we experience, what the ordinary beings, what we experience as a pleasure or happiness is the truth of the suffering change, right? Suffering change. I'm not going to go into detail. Okay, same. And then the question is, in your group discussion, you can discuss how this is, again, it is suffering of change, how the ordinary, the happiness which we experience, any happiness which ordinary beings experience, like us, how they are suffering change. One, how they are suffering, number one. Why they are known as change, right? All these elements we have to explore. So this you can discuss to your group discussion. Number two. What is number three? Pervasive conditioned suffering. What is pervasive conditioned suffering? Pervasive conditioned suffering, anyone give me an example? What is pervasive conditioned suffering? Real quick. Yes, Yaron? Having the five aggregates. Having the five aggregates?
And seeing them as inherently existent.
Okay, and seeing them as inherently existent, that's interesting. If you don't see them as inherent, then it's no problem. No problem. No problem or problem? No problem. Okay, so to have five reasons is a problem. Seeing the five aggregates as inherently existent. So why do you say five aggregates? So why not you say the flower or the house or chocolate like this? Okay, anyone else?
Karma and afflictive emotions.
Karma and afflictive emotions. Karma and afflictive emotions. Very good. Karma and afflictive emotions. Yes. Anyone else?
Holding to true existence?
Uh,
Holding to true existence? Holding to true existence.
all things to do with true existence.
No, holding things as true existence.
Holding things. Oh, that's interesting. Holding things as truly existent. Okay. Very good. Anyone else?
Self-cherishing, self-grasping.
Self-cherishing, self-grasping. Self-grasping, I would say yes. Self-cherishing, I would say half-half. Because self-cherishing, there are two, gross and the subtle. The subtle one, is not included there in suffering change. The gross one, no, we are talking about the pervasive condition suffering, right? Gross one we can include in there, but the subtle one is not. Even if you're freed from the pervasive condition suffering, still you have the subtle self-cherishing mind. Anyone else? Yes?
The reborn again and again in samsara unwillingly.
Very good. Involuntary birth. Involuntary birth. Suffering means I don't want it, and yet it is happening. This is known as suffering. I don't want it, and yet it is happening. Involuntary. Involuntary taking birth in samsara. This is one basic condition of suffering. And then, as said here, that our being under the control of the contaminated karmas and afflictions. Our being under control. Don't just say karmas. Contaminated karmas. Our being under control of contaminated karmas and afflictions. This is pervasive condition of suffering. Of course, if you have to go into detail of these three sufferings, we need at least like 3 sessions. Okay, I'll take for granted that you have these things there. Okay, these 3 things we say they're the suffering. Finish the truth of suffering. What is the second one? Truth of cause of suffering. The Buddha said, this is the truth of the cause of suffering. Okay, truth of cause of suffering. What are the truth of cause of suffering? What are the causes of suffering? Anyone? Very quick. Ignorance, negative emotions, attachment,
Karma and delusion.
karma,
Karma and delusion.
contaminated karmas. Don't just say karma. Buddha also has karmas, right? Buddha also has uncontaminated karmas. So Buddha will also become problematic. So never say karma. Just say contaminated karmas and afflictions, delusions. Very good. You said something?
I said afflictive emotions.
Afflictive emotions. Very good.
Lack of discipline.
Huh?
Lack of discipline.
Lack of discipline, very good. Craving, very good.
Active seeds of the afflicted active seeds.
Okay, active seeds of the afflictions, active seeds of the afflictive emotions, afflictive obscurations, very good.
Kleshas.
Glaciers meaning afflictions, very good. Afflictive and cognitive obscurations. Okay, so we're talking about what? We are identifying what? Cause of suffering, right? Cause of suffering. So cognitive obscurations, is it included there? Afflictive obscurations included. Cognitive obscurations, are they included here? Why not?
Because they're not the causes of suffering. One can be liberated from the suffering and still have cognitive obscurations.
Very good. Okay, so the idea is cause of suffering means you have these things, your suffering perpetuates, you have the suffering. So somebody who has already liberated the suffering, arhats. Okay, how many of you are hearing this word arhat for the first time? Raise your hands. One. Okay, so the arhats means somebody who is already liberated from suffering, right? Who's already liberated from suffering, this is known as arhat. Okay, now somebody who's already achieved the state of arhatship, already liberated from samsara or suffering, they still have the cognitive obscurations because they are yet to become Buddha. So the achieving enlightenment is two levels. If you can remember this morning what we did is that cognitive, as we said, cognitive obscurations. Okay, let us say our mind, the Buddha nature. Each one of us? How many of you have the Buddha nature in your mind, with you? Raise your hands. Huh?
All of us.
All of us. We all have. Are you sure? Yes, we all have. We all have this Buddha nature. If the Buddha nature is there, if the seed of perfection is there, why it is not manifest now? Why it is not manifest now? Because it is obscured by the mental defilements. You getting it? Because it is defiled by obscured by the mental defilements. And the mental defilements which obscure this, for example, the gold mixed with the soil. Is the gold visible? Not the solid gold, not the solid gold, gold from the gold mine. Gold mine, you take out the gold ore. So it's just the soil and gold mix. You don't see the gold there, right? Why the gold means the gold will glow in the daytime. Why it is not glowing there in the daytime? Because it is mixed with the dirt, the soil. Okay. Now, likewise, the Buddha nature we have. Why it is not visible is because it is mixed with the mental defilements. So this mental defilement, for you very quick, because we have to, anyways, we have to finish this chapter, right? We have only today 4 sessions, and tomorrow we have the 3 sessions. Okay, so to finish this, I have to dash through a little bit. But those of us here who are attending this class for the first time, in a way you are very lucky, because you are directly jumping into PhD program. You are very lucky, right? And at the same time, you have to compromise. Okay, even if you don't understand a little bit, you have to bear. Okay, I'm very lucky that I'm in PhD program, although I'm yet to do my class 5. Right? Okay. So there, the point is, what was it talking? Cognitive and afflictive obscurations, right? Okay, mental defilements. So this mental defilement, I'm going to give some very easy examples. Okay, this mental defilement is like, say, the garlic. Say I don't eat garlic, and somebody smashed garlic in my mug. So which means that I'm very, very upset. Then, who smashed garlic in my mug? Then you owned up saying that I did it, I'm very sorry. Then you remove the garlic. What do? You remove the garlic, you wash it so well. Okay, now is there any garlic there? You put a finger there and then see if there's any garlic. You can't see any garlic there. Then you smell. It still smells garlic. You getting it? So likewise, the mental stain that we have, the mental defilement which is mixed with the Buddha nature within us. So that is, it has 2 forms. One is the solid part of the mental defilement, and the other one is removing the solid part, then the smell is left. The solid part is the afflictive obscurations, and the smell is analogy to the cognitive obscurations. You getting it? So for you to be free from suffering, you don't have to remove the smell. You can simply remove the solid defilement, the afflictive obscurations. Remove the afflictive obscurations, you'll become arahat. You'll be free from suffering. No fear anymore. No misery anymore. No mental agitation anymore. No external factor can affect the peace of your mind. Guaranteed. But still you have the smell of the garlic. This is the subtle stain left there. That is known as the inactive seeds. Inactive seeds, which is also known as the cognitive obscurity. As long as you have that, you will not become Buddha. If you want to become Buddha, if you want to have this Buddha nature come out fully in its full form, then you have to remove the stains as well. You have to remove the smell of the garlic, like the metal sins also. You remove that. Once you remove that, then you become, not only you are free from suffering, you will also be free from all the defects of the mind, which means that you become Buddha, you become perfect. Okay, so this is from this what we have learned is the truth of the cause of suffering. Truth of the cause of suffering, because this is quite a technical class, I like to also give you some technical parts, right? And even if you are new, very new, you're very lucky, right? So we are directly jumping into the technicalities. And then if you find lost, don't worry, during the group discussion, you make the most, you feel free to ask these questions to the more senior, the participants here. Okay, for the technicalities, I'll give some simple examples, then we go into the technicalities. Okay, one. In Tibetan, Aranigarjuna, again the same author Aranigarjuna, what he said is that Leda nyumon sebe thar, leda nyumon namdode, teda jule jubani, tomba yingi kabakyu. Which means that ceasing, stopping, ceasing of afflictions, ceasing of contaminant karmas and afflictions lead to nirvana. Ceasing of contaminant karmas and afflictions lead to nirvana. Afflictions and contaminant karmas arise from the inappropriate attention, which in turn arises from elaboration of ignorance. And this ignorance can be brought to an end by the wisdom of emptiness. Okay. It should be here in this book, the blue book. Okay, page 217. Page 217. Stanza 2. Page 217, stanza 2. Through ceasing karma and afflictions, nirvana is achieved. Karma and afflictions, here karma refers to the contaminant karmas. Karma and afflictions arise from distorted conceptions. Distorted conceptions referring to inappropriate attention. Inappropriate attention. These arise, these referring to the inappropriate attention. These inappropriate attentions arise from elaborations of grasping into existence. And elaborations of grasping into existence cease by the wisdom of emptiness. Okay, so from this, we should know 5 points. From this, we need to know 5 points. Okay, one is the immediate suffering that we go through. Point number 1, suffering. Okay, it says, through ceasing common afflictions, nirvana is achieved. What's the opposite of nirvana? Samsara. Samsara meaning suffering. Okay, so one is suffering, or samsara is the opposite of nirvana, which is implicitly taught when the nirvana is taught here. And this samsara arises because of the contaminated karmas. Number 2. Samsara meaning you're suffering. Your suffering arises from contaminated karmas. Number 2. And contaminated karmas arise from afflictions. Number 3. Contaminated karmas arise from afflictions. Number 3. Afflictions arise from inappropriate attention. Afflictions arise from inappropriate attention. And inappropriate attention arises from elaboration of self-grasping ignorance. Okay, you may be wondering what each of these mean. Don't worry. First, you have to have these. Your job to have these 5 points on your fingertips. My job to explain what these are. Okay, your job done? Okay, first one is suffering. Number 2 is contaminated karmas. Number 3 is afflictions. Number 3 is what is number 1? Suffering. Samsara or suffering. What is number 2? Contaminated karmas. What is number 3? Afflictions. What is number 4? Inappropriate attention. Inappropriate attention. What is number 5? Elaboration of self-grasping ignorance. Okay, you can say self-grasping ignorance, but to suit the explanation here, to suit the wordings of Aranagarjuna's wordings here, we say elaboration of self-grasping ignorance. And you can freely ask me why the self-grasping ignorance is referred to as elaboration. Why it is elaboration? You can freely ask these questions to me, right? Okay. So we have the 5 points. Tell me, what are the 5 points? Suffering, contaminated karmas, afflictions, inappropriate attention, elaboration of self-grasping. Very good. Okay. So now to know this, now my job to explain what these 5 points are. Okay, let's say, let me give an example. Okay, you're all dreaming. We're all sleeping in Tel Aviv, not in the kibbutz Yagiham, right? We are all sleeping in what? We are all sleeping in Tel Aviv, and you are dreaming of being in Yagiham, right? And in the dream, we are all attending a class. In the dream, I show you a mobile. Hey. In the dream, you are dreaming now, and I will show you mobile. Okay, tell me. You can switch from the dream state to the waking state. Now to the waking state, the mobile that I showed you, is this a real mobile or a dream mobile?
Dream.
Huh?
Dream.
Dream mobile. Very good. Now go back to the dream. Right? So this, you see the dream mobile. First, you see the dream mobile. Dream mobile, you see it as in the dream. You see it as a real mobile, or you see it as a dream mobile?
Real.
In the dream, you see it as a real mobile. Is that mistaken mind, or this is the valid mind? Is this a ignorance, or this is the ignorance, or this is wisdom? Ignorance. Okay, everything starts from there. This ignorance. You getting it? Seeing the dream mobile as a real mobile. Then you look at it very carefully, right? Not only it is a mobile, it is iPhone X. You exaggerate. You exaggerate, right? You have the inappropriate attention to see it as something inappropriately expensive, or inappropriately bad, inappropriately good, right? Inappropriate attention to say that this is not only mobile, it is iPhone X. No, what is it? iPhone X, right? Then what happens? Okay, he is not so keen on iPhone X, so forth, right? Maybe somebody has given him, right? If I ask him to exchange it, he will be happy to exchange it. Geshe, please, I have my 500 shekel mobile. Would you mind exchanging with yours? You say this, which means craving arises. Craving towards the iPhone X arises. Craving is affliction. Craving is affliction, right? Then what happens? Your neighbor says that, no, I said it before. Then you become so angry towards that person. Anger. This craving gives rise to anger. Craving attachment, this gives rise to anger. Both are afflictions. So these afflictions, what will happen? Then two of you will have fist fight. Fist fight is karma, action. Fist fight is action. With this fist fight, then what happens? The police come. Police take you to prison. The prison is not a good place. There is a samsara. You're getting it? Okay, how many points are there? First, started with seeing the dream mobile as a real mobile, number 1. Then seeing this mobile as a very expensive mobile, number 2. Then that is inappropriate attention. Then number 3, what happens? Hey, what happens then?
Anger.
Huh? Craving and anger arises. You crave towards the mobile, and somebody who competes with you, there's anger arises. These are the afflictions. With the afflictions will end you to fist fight, which is karma, action. So contaminated karma, very good, contaminated karma. This contaminated karma then takes you to prison, which is not a good place, samsara, right? So there are 5 points. If you don't want to end up in prison, what should you have done? You should not have fight. Very good. If you don't want to be in the prison, you should have stopped fighting. If you don't want to have fighting, you should have stopped attachment to the mobile and aversion to your competitor. If you don't want to compete with the person and attachment to the mobile, you should not have seen this mobile as a very expensive mobile. If you don't want to see this expensive mobile, you should not have seen this dream mobile as a real mobile. Right? So, if you don't want this suffering in prison, while in dream, if you don't want it, finally, what should you be doing? Finally, you should not have seen the dream mobile as a real mobile. Right from the beginning, if you say this dream mobile is empty of being a real mobile, if you know this, all these problems, the chain of the problem will have stopped. You getting it? Okay, so this is how the suffering comes into being. So this suffering comes into being on the basis of these 4 causal factors. These four causal factors, they give rise to the 5th one, which is the suffering, right? Which is samsara. Okay, so what we have here, the 12 links of dependent origination here. So this will tell us all these. In fact, this version, stanza that we have here, that we have here is the elaborate version of this one. There's a 12 links, which is very elaborate, but we have here is philosophically very elaborate, more elaborate than what is given here in this wheel. Okay, so if you know this, right? Generally speaking, if somebody who did not study this, if somebody asks, right, if you have not studied this, what is the truth of, by the way, what are we studying now? What makes us to go through this?
Causes of suffering.
Cause of suffering, thank you. We are looking for the truth of suffering is finished. Now we are looking for the cause of the suffering, to the original suffering. Original suffering, if somebody asks what is the cause of suffering, you can say contaminated karmas and afflictions. Right? But if you study this, not only contaminated karmas and afflictions, there are 4. What are the 4?
Ignorance.
Contaminated karmas, afflictions, inappropriate attention, and the elaboration of ignorance, self-grasping ignorance. 4, right? So these 4 are the elaborate version of the contaminated karmas and afflictions. In other words, the first one, contaminated karma, the remaining 3 all can be grouped into affliction. All can be categorized in the category of the afflictions, but in more detailed version. In more detail, right? Okay. Along with this, we also have to keep in mind what is known as the active seeds. This morning I was mentioning the active seeds. Active seeds meaning say for example, how many of you are angry at the moment? I don't see any angry faces, right? Okay, but tomorrow when you go back, we're not sure. Right? Tomorrow when you go back, right? Okay. Say tomorrow, anytime in the future, anger arises. Then the question is, how come that when you are in the kibbutz, you do not have anger, and suddenly the anger came? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? It came not from the anger when you are here. When you are here, what's the continuation? Anger is not there. What's the continuation? The seed is there. Active seed is there. Active seed is within us. So the seed of the apple is not an apple. It's not the vibrant living apple, but it has the capacity to give rise to anger. You getting it? Likewise, the seed of anger, the seed of apple has the capacity to give rise to apples, edible apples. Although the seed itself is not edible apples. Likewise, the seed of anger within us now, I don't know, all of you have it, but sure I have, right? Seed of anger. So I don't know, some of you might not have. I'm not sure. If you don't have it, then the purpose for you coming here is wrong. Right? Maybe you've come here to check me. Right? If you have no seed of anger. Okay, so the point is that we have the seed of anger. This sort of seed of anger, with the presence of seed of anger, it doesn't mean that we have anger right now. But anytime this seed can germinate in the form of anger any time, depending on the situation. Okay, likewise, contamic karmas also have the seed.